All right, everybody. In today's episode, we are discussing work-life balance with Micah here on The Chosen Show. This is a great episode, and I have a great conversation with an incredible leader here in Omaha, Nebraska. You do not want to miss it. So check it out. All right, guys, Joey McKernan here with The Chosen Show, and I am really excited for this week's episode. And before we get into that, just a reminder, guys, we give these episodes weekly so that you can live to who God has called you to be. We truly believe that everybody has a calling in their life, a purpose, gifts, passions, and our heart is to see you come to that and live out who God has called you to be. So I'm really excited for this week's episode. Make sure you subscribe. We're on YouTube. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, but we're also on all the social media platforms, including TikTok. You can't forget about TikTok. All right. I am excited for our conversation today with my friend, pastor, teacher, Micah Eldridge from LifeGate. Micah, how are you, brother?
I'm great, Joey. Thanks so much for having me on. Love being here. Love the work y'all are doing at Abide in North Omaha. So appreciate it, and love that I can be here.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. If you don't know about Micah, he is the one of the lead pastors at LifeGate, and he is a part of that leadership team leading that church, and they do incredible things in our city. Huge heart for the community and for what God is doing through the kingdom. He's an incredible teacher. Make sure you check him out on their websites, and just has impacted my life probably more than he knows. So Micah, man, thank you again. Today we're talking about work-life balance, right? And I think this is really important. I think this is a huge conversation, especially in today's age for a variety of reasons. But I would love to hear, as you guys know, I always ask our guests, what do they want to talk about, right? What's on their heart? And so, man, why was this one of the topics that you had shared with me? What's the reason for that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the personal. You know, I'm being a pastor now. I've been a pastor now I've been in ministry full time for 20 years as of this year. Married with 4 kids. 2 of our kids are in middle school. 2 of our kids are in elementary school. And so just managing and being a good steward of all the things that God has put in our lives as a family, and the calling that's on our lives. We found it really difficult as we kind of entered into our 30s and, you know, had a bunch of stuff happening that just recognizing that we couldn't manage it all really, really well. And you could get through the day, but maybe not get through the day with a lot of joy and a lot of peace. And so this became a real passion of mine, probably about 10 years ago. Some of it is just how I'm wired as an individual, but also just the circumstances in our lives kind of forced us to say, we can't live like this. And so partly it starts just with me, with us as a family, but then even I look at our culture and everyone is running ragged all the time.
Right.
And that the impact of that pace of life can be as mild as just high level anxiety all the time, and a real loss of joy and a loss of peace and sleepless nights, or to the extreme of real destruction of families, of jobs, of careers, of personal health and well-being. So both personally and culturally, I just think it's something we need to learn how to do well.
Yeah, that's interesting. And working in a church for as long as you have, you've seen people just exhausted. I want to press, I know I'm going out of order here with the questions, but I want to press a little bit into the culture thing you just said. You know, when you look at, I think it's Western culture, but let's just talk America.
Yeah.
How does America glorify this, right? How does it celebrate this? What have you seen in that dynamic?
Yeah, that's a great way to ask the question. How do we glorify it? Man, I could talk about this for a long time. I'll start by saying where this really started to catch my attention was in 2014. I read an article by a guy named Sky Jethani, and it was entitled "Work is the New Sex." And a short article, but the explanation behind it was how the previous generation navigated the sexual revolution, which at its core was beginning to not just enjoy sex, but find your identity and find your meaning and find your purpose in sex in the 60s and in the 70s. We have in the 90s, early 2000s, and then things like the iPhone just took it to a whole new level starting in 2007, begun to now glorify work as a God. We find our identity in it. We find our purpose in it. We find our fulfillment in it. We find our meaning in it. And you probably know this, the studies that show that the millennial generation in America is more work obsessed than any previous generation. It's having an impact on their emotional health, on their spiritual health, on their families. And so I think it's all around us. I would say it this way, it's the air we breathe. And if you're not breathing that air, you might wrongly feel like you're suffocating because you don't care about work as much as the next person. So then you begin to breathe that air or drink that Kool-Aid or whatever analogy you want to use, and it gets into your bloodstream because it's so prevalent in our culture that work is everything.
That's really good. I've never heard that. You said it's a book. Who is it?
It was just a short article.
Yeah,
you could Google it. "Work is the New Sex" by Sky Jethani. It's a great article, great breakdown of kind of what again, 7 years old, but it's still relevant today in the way that he unpacks what's happening.
I've seen, and you just hear the stories about guys that, not always men, but you hear about, oh, well, they're VPs of this corporation and they worked there for 30 years and countless nights and staying there till 9:00 and PM and 10:00 and their marriages are ruined. And I think it's so, man, it's like, I think work has a place in our purpose, right? I think God made us to work, obviously. And I think it has a place in what we get to do. I mean, I love my job. I love it. I think we're called to enjoy work, but I don't think it is our meaning to life. Like that, if we try to seek that there, we're left with nothing, right? But emptiness. How have you seen? So I've seen this in my own life. Some may call me, so some may have an opinion. At different seasons of my life, I've fallen into workaholism.
We all have.
And I think, especially when you're young and you're hustling and you're trying to do something, you're trying to get a job, trying to get hired, you're an intern, you're working like crazy. I've seen it in my own life. I would love to hear from you specifically. How have you seen this in your own life? Or if you want to get vulnerable, you kind of shared it already, but is there any specific example?
Yeah. So when we were first starting our family and our kids were young, my wife stayed at home with the kids. She made a big sacrifice of her own career and was willing to do that. And so I was a college young adult pastor at Lifegate at the time, and being in that ministry setting with college kids, 20 somethings, you want to be available to them when they're available. And the temptation in that setting is to just work around the clock, to make yourself available every night, and you're working through the day and then you're hanging out with people at night, trying to disciple people, having team meetings, having events happen. And I would say for the most part, we did a pretty good job of managing how many nights and weekends I was out. How I tried to always stay present to my wife, to her needs, but I look back now and I say I could have been a lot better. And I could have I could have trusted God more with the fruit of the ministry and not felt like it was all on me to be this constantly present pastor. And then you add to it, technology. And, I mentioned this earlier, when the iPhone came out, I was one of the first ones to get one. I thought that it was awesome. I was like, man, I can do my work on this tiny little device and not have to sit at my desk or have some bulky laptop.
Yep.
What happens is the ownership of that device also breaks down all kinds of boundaries of flexibility, and when do I do work and when do I not do work, and when do I mentally check out, when do I put things on silent, when am I unavailable to the people I'm pastoring, as hard as that may even sound to say as a pastor. There are times where I'm unavailable, and I need to be, because I want to be fully available to my family. And so we've lived a lot of different seasons, and we've tried to learn from each one of them, and we haven't lived any of them perfectly.
Sure.
So a lot of my passion around this is more from our mistakes than anything else. I would say this, the real wake up call for me was an ongoing pattern of losing my temper with my kids and having a short fuse, and being sharp with them, being more harsh than I wanted to be, kind of growing into like kind of the grumpy dad. there are times where I walked away, I don't want to be that guy.
Right.
And just recognizing like, it wasn't just self-control that I needed to develop. It wasn't a more gentle tone that I needed to develop. It wasn't different parenting skill sets, though all of that is good. It's very core. I was running on empty, and I didn't have the fruit of the Spirit, the reserves that I needed to be a love-filled presence in the lives of kids who demand a lot, especially when you got 4 of them, 6 and under. And that was the season of life where I realized I can't keep doing what I'm doing. I need to make some changes so that I have some different reserves internally.
So good.
That I can love better.
That's so good. And sorry to get some of my coffee there. I like what you said about the devices. I mean, we're all addicted. Like, can we all just be a little honest? Like, there's been many researched articles based on dopamine responses and how triggers and, someone needs me, they need my advice, or that, and especially I like that you shared in ministry. I mean, I think this dangerous place that you always feel like you need to be needed.
Yep.
Plus you've got this technology where anybody can get a hold of you and anybody can need you. So then they let you know that they need you. And man, I think I've been convicted of that at many times, of like, man, I'll just answer this one email.
Yeah.
And then it stresses me out, right? And my mind is now in the email and the situation, and now I'm not present. And can you dig a little deeper? How do we do that? I mean, how do we handle this technology age when we're trying to have balance, like you said, and have being present with our wives and our families, but also at work? I mean, people are sitting in meetings on their phones during the meeting, sitting on your phone at home. It's like, man, how do we? It's such a new thing. It's only 20 to 30 years old, like of having it in our hand like this.
Yep.
What is your tips on being helpful there?
A lot of technology tips. I'm kind of a techie person. I love it. So I have to be careful about it. Can I go back a step or two though? Because I want to talk about really the root of all this. I think where it helps us, a good starting point. I'm not as much of a fan of the word balance, though I'll use that at times because people know what you mean. In terms of work life, I like the words rhythms. And seasons. That's kind of how I try to operate. There are certain rhythms in our lives, and there are certain seasons for certain things. I think sometimes when we shoot for balance, we end up getting kind of frustrated, or we wind up kind of being mediocre at everything. What I don't want you to hear me saying as I talk about this is that work's not important. Work's huge for us. Like,
it's good.
I think biblically speaking, you start at the creation story. God worked for 6 days, and then he gave us a Sabbath, and he took a Sabbath, and then he invites us in the 10 Commandments to live that same pattern. And so in some sectors of society, you have to focus more on the 6 days of work, and you have to encourage people, or in some phases of life, like, hey, you need to go after some stuff. Like, it's important to pursue things and to have goals, to go after things. There are other sectors of society or phases of life where you have to say, we need to learn to rest. And I think a lot of times both are important, and they actually feed off of one another, work and rest, from a biblical standpoint. And then you look at the life of Jesus in Matthew 11, where he says, if you're weary, heavy laden, come to me, because my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And I read that several years ago, and it caught my attention that Jesus would actually describe life with him as light and easy. I don't think hardly anybody knows the depth of revelation that's really there. And I began to discover that Jesus didn't just die on a cross to give us access to eternal life, but he actually lived in a way that gives us an example of abundant life. And so I think if we look at the life of Jesus and we look at the book that tells us about Jesus, the Bible, I think we learn about how to live well. How to live the abundant life, to follow the ways of God. And so I think what it teaches us is rhythms, and it teaches us seasons. And I think when we begin to pattern our life around rhythms and seasons, we can begin to get a handle on the crazy and the frenzy and the expectations from that standpoint. And so technology fits into that. That technology needs to be pressed into my biblical understanding of how to live well, and not separated out as this kind of new, this new modern thing that the Bible has nothing to say about. And so I want to manage my phone. I want to manage my technology in a way that still allows me to live a life that has healthy rhythms and healthy seasons. So rhythms, let me just talk about rhythms when it comes to technology. I don't do this well. So let me talk more like what we all should be doing. And I put me in the category of people who need to learn this as well, because I don't execute it perfectly. But in the mornings, I don't touch my phone until I have spent time with the Lord, and until I have connected with Jesus, with my Bible, with my journal, with my coffee, and my prayer time. We don't sleep with our phones in our rooms, so that it's not the last thing we look at before bed, and it's not the first thing we grab in the morning. It's easy if it becomes your alarm to just grab it, and you're just turning your alarm off, but you see this like text that you've got to reply to, or something pops up on your news feed, or a score that you want to find out how the game went. And so we don't sleep with our phones in our rooms. I get up in the morning, I spend time with the Lord, and I don't look at my phone until I've done all of that, until I've really kind of prepared my heart and my mind for the day. So that's a rhythm that I force my phone into that rhythm. And then to go to the end of the day, I try to put my phone to bed before I go to bed. So I try to shut my phone off, like in terms of social media and just fiddling around on it and looking at news feeds and things like that, sometime between 8 and 9 at night. And then usually we're in bed by 10ish. And so I try to give myself just some time each day where I'm not overly connected, and where it's not the last thing that I'm interacting with before I go to bed. I want my wife to be one of the last things I interact with before I go to bed. I want scripture to be one of the last things I interact with before I go to bed. There's actually some science around this that kind of motivated me. And you've probably heard this about your brain and neuroplasticity, and your brain absorbs the most information first thing in the morning and last thing before bed. And so I want my mind to be focused on scripture and the people I love more than Instagram or the news feed at those times of the day. So that's a starting point that I think everybody can apply, no matter what you have happening in your life.
Amen. I mean, no, it's great. And I think we all know that, in the sense of like, if people are listening and I'm listening to you, I'm like, man, I got some work to do because it's so easy, right? It sounds like common sense, but it's not. It's really hard to do some of that stuff. Like when you're sitting at the edge of the bed and you're scrolling and you're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and all of a sudden it's like 45 minutes later,
Yeah.
your mind is all over this stuff and it's like
Right.
stressing you out. Yeah, it's just interesting. It sounds so simple is what I'm trying to say, but it's hard and we're so interconnected. It's like these things are an extension of our hand in a way, like they're just an extension of ourselves in a way.
Yep. And I think this too, that's a great point. I think it is so hard and there's so many exceptions because you could say, but what about, I need to do this right before bed. I need to do this first thing in the morning. I would say this, try it for a week. Just like try it. And you can pick like morning or night. Both I think is ideal. But try it for a week. And I actually think you'll start to, I've gotten to the point now where I don't want to touch it at first thing in the morning.
Wow.
Because I love how I'm starting my days right now. And I can feel the difference. My stress level, my mental state, my clarity of mind, because I'm not going immediately to a news feed, to email, to ESPN, whatever it is. It can be completely innocent. It doesn't have to be anything that you shouldn't be looking at. It's just what we fill our minds with first thing in the morning matters.
Like Adrian Martinez transferring, is that the?
Yeah, I just saw that.
No, I mean, hey, that one, I was in the middle of a meeting and I won't lie, I checked my phone. I was like, what? Took my mind way to another place, but that's kind of what it does. I mean,
did not see that.
That's a whole nother podcast for another day. But
I'm a Georgia fan, so I like the Huskers, and I'm riding high right now. But a little bit on Saturday.
You're kicking everybody's butt. Yeah, but I think it's interesting how our technology, it takes our mind to just different places, and it's very difficult to be present. Let's say you get an email that wasn't super friendly, it just, there's this thing that shocks through your body of stress and worry. And I think we've all been there. And so, again, I think it's really important. I think it's hard, but I think technology is not going anywhere anytime soon. And we have just got to continue to figure out how to be healthy as a society. Yep. My next question would be, what are some flags? So, I don't even think this was on the question sheet, but I'm going to ask it. What are some flags? Let's say I'm just me, right? And sometimes I think we're blind to how tired we actually are. I think we're blind to how stressed out we kind of are, or we're kind of running like a tornado. Sometimes I don't even know we know it's happening until we see some things or somebody tells us something. I've had my wife a few times in my career say, you're just not in a good place. Like you're running too hard, or like you said, you were short with your kids, right? That was a flag. Yeah. That was a flag for you. What would be a general, if you think through just somebody, what would be some themes or some flags like to start to look for in their lives?
Really good. So one of the things you can actually use technology to your benefit in this way. If you have an Apple Watch, check your heart rate patterns and how your heart rate goes throughout the day. And do you have a high resting heart rate? Are you in the 80s and 90s all the time? Are you more in the 60s? That's an indicator of how much stress you're carrying, how hard your mind and your body are cranking. And you can actually get so used to that you don't even know any different. I was in a meeting with somebody one time and he actually said like I can feel I'm nervous about this upcoming conversation we're about to have. And, he looked down and he's like, I'm in the 90s. And I looked and I was in the 60s. It wasn't a big meeting to me, but it was going to be a big meeting to him. But using that as a little tool to gauge it's a little bit of an internal indicator of how you're doing, how well you're sleeping. Some people think if I'm not sleeping well, maybe I'm not tired. I would say a lot of times, if you're not sleeping well, it's probably because you're stressed. It could be that you're overtired. I think most people don't even know how to sleep well. I've been thinking a lot about sleep lately, and really, actually, this sounds strange. I've been working on my sleep a lot lately. And again, I've been using technology to help me with my watch. I've been managing or kind of recording my sleeping patterns and things like that, because it's a good indicator. If you're not sleeping well, you're probably stressed out. Um, talk to people around you. That's another huge one. I had kids that allowed me to have kind of this reflection of how I was treating people. I could put on a good face at work, but my kids were kind of getting the most authentic version of me, unfortunately, because there weren't any filters up. And so talk to your close friends, talk to your spouse, talk to your coworkers, and give them permission to give you honest feedback on what is it like being around me. And if you have honest friends who care about you, they'll tell you the truth, and you might discover, man, I'm anxious, I'm stressed all the time, and that's an indicator that you're probably not, you don't have good healthy rhythms and balances. Or they just might be like, man, you always look preoccupied. We did an evaluation recently. I had some employees evaluate me, and one of the things of feedback, I'm talking a lot about my watch. Obviously, it was Micah. When Micah's watch goes off, he leaves the room mentally. Like when he gets a notification on his watch, I can tell I've lost him at that point, at least for the next little while. I'm not a good multitasker. And so I've created now I have do not disturb on my watch and on all my devices from 8 to 5 every day, so that any meeting I'm in, I'm completely present. And then I can grab my phone and check it when I have a free moment in between meetings. But I don't let my phone tell me when to look at it. I look at it when I need to. So feedback from friends, how you're sleeping, your heart rate, those are great indicators on, am I living at a healthy pace, or do I need to potentially make some changes to this whole idea of better rhythms and better seasons?
It's good. It's really good. I think back to some of the times I just, like you said, preoccupied, right?
Yeah.
You're thinking about other things, and you're not present, and you're not as joyful, and like you're serious, but your mind is somewhere else, and you're worried, and you're not sleeping. I think I had a situation a couple months ago. It was interesting, and it was just challenging, and I was waking up in the middle of the night, and I'd wake up at like 3 a.m. every night. It was weird. I never wake up. I'm like a rock. I'm like dead. And then God revives me. I'm like, but I kept waking up at 3 a.m. and it was like 2 to 3. And I'm like, what the heck is the problem? I think another thing too is physical. Our body tells things to us, like you said, like the heart rate. I also think like in the neck, I get a lot of stress in my neck. I'll feel like it's like knotted up, and so those are really, really good. So guys, as you're listening to this, I think self-awareness understands the flags. You understand your flags, and I think we all are a little different in that. Some of us have high heart rates, get sweaty, neck. We get short with people. We get distant from people. We get kind of a fog. Some people I've heard say they kind of have a mental fog where they're just constantly can't have the clarity, like you were saying.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is really critical to this, Micah, is your off day or your Sabbath. You mentioned it earlier. I am a big off day believer. I think it's biblical, like you said earlier. I don't like the term off day. I prefer like growth day or rest day or refresh day. That doesn't make any sense, but you get what I'm saying. What does I know what mine looks like, and I'll share it, but I would love to hear, what does yours look like, especially with kids and a family? So do you actually have an off day, or what does that actually look like? I'd love to hear.
That's a great question. And I'd love to hear about yours too. So one of the things that's also helped me with understanding healthy rhythms is our church really embraces this and has embraced it as long as I've been there. That we encourage what we call a Sabbath lifestyle. That we want to have one day a week that is not associated with work at all. And so we try our best to schedule our lives to where we have a day off and we have a Sabbath. Our day off is when we get our oil changed, we get our haircut, when we cut the grass, when we clean the house. But then our Sabbath day is a day where we really try to design it around a day of three big things that I like to focus on that I think are very biblical: rest, worship, and delight. I think we see these as the pattern of Sabbath keeping in the Bible. We rest, and rest looks different to different people. But we rest in the main way that I rest is in that most people that I think the Bible teaches us not to rest. The word Sabbath means cease, to cease from your work. The main starting place for rest is simply nothing. I don't do anything that's associated with my job. And so I'm away from my phone on my Sabbath when I do it right. I don't look at my email. I don't do a to-do list. I'm low technology on my Sabbath day.
No to-do list? What? No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, it's an amazing feeling, depending on how you're wired. But it's a low technology day. So for me, that puts me into a state of rest. I'm not like a late sleeper and stuff like that. But for some people, that is more restful to them. Worship is the second piece that I want to connect with God on my Sabbath. I want to have a little bit more time in the Bible if possible. I want to spend some time in nature. It's a way that I really connect with the Lord. And so I want to try to get into nature, either alone or with, my family, and just kind of take it in and be reminded of him as our creator and our provider and the one who makes the world go round. Like, my work doesn't make the world go round. And that's what Sabbath reminds me of every week. And then delight. I think we want to enjoy the things that God's given us to enjoy. And so for us, Sabbath is usually like donuts and sugar and sweets and greasy pizza on Friday night. We do a Sabbath dinner on Friday nights, and we get pizza from our favorite place, and we eat together, and we pray a Sabbath prayer. It's not very religious, but it's very real to us. And we kick our Sabbath off on Friday night, and then it goes into Saturday evening. And then it's just more like sugar and fun. And to us as a family, those three things are really great. I could say a lot about all the challenges of trying to do it as a family. Some people do their Sabbath while their kids are at school on a day that their kids are in school, but we like to do Sabbath together as a family.
That's awesome. I love that you guys do the pizza and the sugar. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I don't have kids, so I think with family, it's kind of interesting what season your family is in. Kind of can help kind of direct how that looks. I think every season's a little different.
Yeah.
But for me, I would say what did you say? It was the off day and the Sabbath day. Is that what you said?
Yeah, we take a day off and then a Sabbath.
Okay, so my day off would be Friday, and
Okay.
I don't work in a church, but I do speak a lot on Sunday mornings at churches, and I do a lot of stuff on the weekends. Tend to be like Sundays, and we just do a lot for Abide, and so I take Fridays off. It's also just been in my schedule for so long. It's just kind of a part of my rhythm. I go pretty hard for 4 days. I have boundaries, but like those 4 days are like all in, and then my Friday is I usually get up. Let me think here. So I usually go to the court. So something I delight in, I love to do is just shoot a basketball. And that's like, I love it. It's
That's
the
great.
only place I can like clear my head and just quit thinking about stuff. And I'll listen to a book or something. I'm thinking, I'm creating.
Yeah.
I'll get a pickup game going with somebody that'll probably beat me. And, just hang out, play ball. Usually I'll go to a coffee shop from there, kind of just worship, journal, stuff like that. Then after that, I'll get a meal in and then I'll go work out, like really work out. Something I've learned about myself, and I think everyone is a little different, guys, when we talk about refreshing is what fills you, right? And everybody's a little different. So for me, I'm a very active person. I have like sitting on a couch and watching like Netflix to me is not filling. It just makes me feel gross. It's just me. It's just how I am. But going to the gym and playing basketball and being active and getting those endorphins moving and working out, to me, that fills me. And it gets me just reset my mind. I feel full. I feel excited. So I kind of do two different workouts. One's light, typically cardio, and then one's kind of more lifting in the afternoon. And then I'll go home and I'll start to plan my week that's coming up. One of the things that, again, understanding, I think, how you think, and I know you had shared not thinking about work things, and this is where I broke your rule, but that actually helps me rest, because when I know that things are planned well ahead of time,
Good.
I can take I can breathe. I can just let it go. So that rolls into the Saturday, which would be like me and my wife's time off together, which I think would be your Sabbath, I think is how you plan that. So again, for me, it's like if I can plan out and what we're going to do, again, that just how I'm wired, again, like that to-do list and like, what are we going after next week? If I know that's taken care of and that I can kind of refocus, I can rest. So that's what mine looks like. And then I might even go back to the gym again. That sounds crazy, but like I spend most of my day in a gym on some level, and it just a lot of energy and but that's just the season I'm kind of in. I'm sure when we have kids, that'll change, but
That's good, man. I love that. That's great. Yeah, I'm similar. I didn't really break down my day to day, but we do. Friday's my day off as well. So I'll take the kids to school. My wife and I will usually go on a morning breakfast date. Great chance for us just to kind of reconnect after a full week. And then we'll go our separate ways on Friday. We'll do, she'll do things she needs to do. I'll do things I need to do. She works, so she'll do some of her work. And then when we pick the kids up from school, at the end of Friday, they come home and we do something called Sabbath clean. So my wife needs a clean house if she's going to be able to Sabbath, if she's going to be able to rest.
Amen.
And so for about an hour, our kids just crank it out and they get our house in good shape, and we make a fun competition out of it sometimes. And then once the house is in order, we'll order our pizza, go pick it up, have our Sabbath dinner together. Sometimes we'll do a family movie night on a Friday night where we eat popcorn and M&Ms and just, pick a good movie and lay on the couch. Sometimes we'll do a life group with our good friends, and we'll get together with good friends. And for us, that's really life-giving as well. And Saturday, there's no alarms. You get up whenever you want to get up. It's a slow morning. Sometimes we're in seasons where the kids have sports, but we really try to make it feel like not so much an obligation, but like a celebration. So let's go get Starbucks on the way to the game, and let's get the kids a cake pop, and let's cheer our brothers and sisters on, and let's not try to rush around and have to, just run from one thing to the next, but let's just take our time and enjoy the soccer games or enjoy the basketball games or the football games.
That's good.
And then if we can get outside, like I mentioned earlier, if we can do something 9 months out of the year, we can do that here. Winters are hard for us when it comes to Sabbath because we're stuck inside and our kids have tons of energy, and we have not figured out how to Sabbath well in the winter. We're usually
just throw them outside. They'll be fun.
I mean, there's so many, like there's times where it's just way too cold and we're all on top of each other in our house and it feels like anything but Sabbath. But, I would say, we don't do Sabbath perfectly almost ever. When it really comes together, it's like, man, that was awesome. But we're just committed to continuing to try and experiment because we see it such a pattern in scripture. And I think God's heart behind Sabbath is like, man, if you do this, you'll live well. Like this is a really good rhythm for how to live life and kind of that work-life balance. And if you don't, then you will live outside of my best for you. And so we're just committed to trying to make it, even though we're not that great at it.
No, it's so good, man. And I appreciate just everything you've shared. you got me thinking about a couple things here. And I think the day in rhythms, like at your work, some people don't, I think some people have this more than they think they do. Some people would say, well, Joey, you're in that type of work and you get to choose your rhythms. There's some truth in that. And I'm not like naive to that. When you're in ministry or an owner of a business or something, you have a little more freedom and choice and like what your schedule is. But I would say that people have a typical rhythm. And I think there's a lot of adjustments there. Mine for my day. So I don't want to go home just done. Like I have nothing to give. Like if I go home to my wife, I have nothing to give. Like, what's the point of that? You know what I'm saying? Like, and so what we do is my admin, but she kind of schedules this. I try to have slow mornings. I hate fast mornings. I just hate it. I hate I get in at 8:00 and there's meetings and meetings. I mean, like all this stuff going on. Like I like to tackle that usually after 11 p.m. Like usually after 11 p.m. I'll grab some lunch and then I'll jump into stuff with people in the meetings. So I usually do project admin work in the mornings when my mind is fresh and I can create and kind of think on my own. And then on the evenings, I actually meet, or the evenings, that afternoon into like the 4 or 5 o'clock, I try to meet with people. That's just how I'm wired. Some people flip that. Some people meet in the morning because that's where they create and then they do their stuff in the evening. That is how I work. I would love to hear, what does your day look like on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Have you built a rhythm in there so you kind of stay, or is it kind of just like scattered?
Yeah. So I'm trying to do that. I'm kind of stepping into a new role at our church. And so I'm about 3 or 4 months into kind of a new way of doing things that I'm finding really life-giving for me. So I go in on Monday and I'm like you, I like kind of a slower morning if possible, especially early in the week. And so on Mondays, my mornings I'm more creative and productive in the morning than I am in the afternoon. And so I do the most important things when I'm at my best. So I do my most important stuff in the mornings typically. And then I do things that are still important and necessary, but later in the day. So, and that's usually meetings and emails and stuff like that. So similar to you, that's kind of how I structure. So Mondays for me are creator days and kind of refresher days coming off a weekend, especially if I preached. I'll be on social media a little bit more on Monday mornings, interacting with people from our church, texting people, just kind of pastoring people in that way, but also just like reading other things that are out there. Listening to other sermons, scrolling through Twitter or Instagram and just kind of hearing what people are saying about the world and life and the Bible and Jesus and the different things that I follow. So it's kind of a Monday morning kind of fills me back up. And then I start to create. I start to put my sermons together later in the morning. I start to put an outline together. And then Monday afternoons is a little bit more planning the rest of my week. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are all meetings for me. And that's just kind of the rhythm of our church. And so that's where I do heavy meetings, pretty much 9 to 3-ish. And so before 9 and after 3, I can kind of do some of the administrative stuff. And then Thursdays are just completely clear. And those are just a pure writing, creativity day for me. If I'm working on a sermon, if I'm working on some planning for the future, those types of things. So between Monday and Thursday, I can put together a sermon. I can do a lot of my planning and praying for kind of what's ahead. And then Tuesday and Wednesday is meetings. And then the weekends, I'm usually preaching or I'm hanging out at one of our churches, being with our people.
That's good. That's good. And whatever your guys' schedule is, so you just heard Micah's, you heard mine. I think it's important to have a present mind in whatever your schedule looks like. I read an article and it talked about how when your mind is not present, the energy sources in your brain it's killing itself because it can't, your brain is like all over the place, right? And so you're just getting yourself tired. And I've seen people, if I'm doing creative admin stuff, I'm trying to just do that, right? and just focus in on that and keep my present mind there. If I'm in a budget meeting, I'm going to be all in on that budget meeting, even though most of us just can't stand them. But some of us love them.
Right.
If I'm meeting with, you know what I'm saying, and staying present in each block of your day, I think is really important.
Have you read At Your Best by Carey Nieuwhof?
I haven't, but I know a lot of his content around that stuff. I know
what we're talking about. That book is really good. And your listeners may really enjoy that one.
What's it called?
At Your Best.
At Your Best. Okay.
Your Best, Carey Nieuwhof. He really does a great job of creating kind of a system for how we use our energy throughout our day that can apply to pretty much any season of life, any profession. It's really brilliant.
Last thing that I wanted to add from my schedule is I like to call my close friends on my off day.
No, that's good.
One of the things that, and Mike, I don't know if you do this, but I try to call them. I have no agenda. I have no like, hey, what's going on? Like men don't usually do that. I don't think as much. Like we don't just call people to call people. Right. I have made it a habit to call them because I know that if we can, it just fills me. And I think having the awareness of what gives you energy is like 98% of the battle. And for me, our job is people. And I'm not saying they don't fill me, but you're serving people all the time, right? Yep. So it's like, who are those two people that when you go to, you can tell them anything, you can have fun, you can make fun of each other. That fills me. I don't know. Is that something that you've ever done? Or
I think that's brilliant. To me, when it comes to kind of your Sabbath day, I think thinking about like how you're wired really matters. So like if I'm an introvert, I may need a little bit more time alone. If I'm an extrovert, I may need a party. Like for some people, my wife is more extroverted than me and she's like looking for people to hang out with. I'm a little bit more like, man, I'm just looking to sit, and read. And so, but we balance each other well there. And I do think, people are such a big part of how we live life well, and the right people in the right slots of time in our lives is really important. So like, I love how you said it. Like, we're serving all week long. There's a time to say that I need some people who are going to kind of invest in me to balance that out at some point. And I think we need to be conscious of that. If all you're doing is giving, you're going to wear out at some point. And if all you're doing is receiving and you've just got all these mentors who are pouring into your life all the time, you need to go give something away.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I think that concludes it. Micah, thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, it was great to be here.
Thank you. Your wisdom, just your heart for Jesus. I love that this has been something that God has just been working on you. And I know that this is going to help a ton of people. So guys, thank you so much again for being a part of our episode here. And again, continue to fight for this. I love, Micah, what you said. None of us are perfect in this. None of us have perfect weeks and perfect schedules, and we're not robots. We have good weeks and maybe not so good weeks. But the important part is I think we have to continue to strive and fight for health. Yeah. And the healthier we are, the more we can serve, the more we can impact, the more we can change lives. But we have to be healthy, and healthy things grow. So appreciate you guys. Again, fight for it. A couple things I took away as I wrote on my napkin over here is just continue to fight for those rhythms. Continue to look at the rhythm on your off day, look at the rhythm in your weekday, and just continue to fight with your rhythm with technology. I think that's important. We have got to learn how to balance our lives to be present for the people that matter the most. So love you guys. Appreciate you. We'll be back here next week.